Welcome to this recorded session on reflective models and critical incident frameworks, which we're going to be using to analyse our mentoring practice at a deeper level. So some of you may already be familiar with critical incident frameworks, perhaps from other training. I know I was introduced to them during the NPQ and NPQ leadership course, but we're now going to be applying this to the context of mentoring others. And just to re-emphasise what was introduced in the reflection and reflexivity session, we're going to aim to move ourselves and our mentees from this restricted level of reflection to an extended level. So moving away from that narrow perspective in our day-to-day practice to more of a wider view, where we're making links to theory to support our reflections and to enable us to apply a more objective stance on our mentoring practice. If we consider what a critical incident might look like in mentoring, we can see that it's a diagnostic tool which we can use for analysing our practice in an academic way. We're developing from a novice interpretation of events to a more expert interpretation, which we can use to justify our judgments. So unlike the image that's shown here, a critical incident isn't a dramatic event which sets off alarm bells or flashing lights. It's a commonplace event that occurs as part of our routine practice. But the thing that's critical about it is that it enables us to analyse the event at a deeper level, to reveal our underlying trends, motives and structures which influence our mentoring practice. And in working through critical incidents that have occurred, as a mentor, we're not only seeking to recall, document and explain these events, not just for our interest, but we're seeking to illuminate and articulate and gain an understanding and control over our professional practice and habits. So if we make links to the analogy of an iceberg, the actual event is just the tip of the iceberg, the superficial level, whereas through the critical incident framework we're looking at it, what's underneath, and applying the literature, research and theory. And one of the frameworks for critical incident analysis is this Green, Lister and Crisp framework, which as you can see is broken down into 5 different stages. So we have the account of the incident, the initial response to the incident, any issues and dilemmas that have been highlighted by it, and then most importantly looking at our learning from that and outcomes. So under each stage there are some further questions to guide our reflection. So we've got the descriptive account of what's happened, where, when, who was involved, what was your role in the incident, what was the context, and what was the purpose and focus of your mentoring. So then going on to what was the initial responses to the incident, how did it make you feel when this incident occurred, what thoughts were going through your head, and what were the responses of the other people who were involved, or what do you maybe think that they might have been. So that's thinking about it from the different perspectives of people who are involved. And then issues and dilemmas, what mentoring practice dilemmas were maybe identified as a result of that incident, and were there any values and ethical issues that were highlighted. And most importantly, what have you learned from the incident about yourself, your relationship with others, the mentoring process, any policies and procedures that might have been affected that in any way or might not have been in place. What theory or theories can you make links to
So this is where you might want to go away and have a look at if there's any articles online to support you with that, or if there's any research that you can apply to help develop your understanding at a bit of a deeper level. Is there any policies or organisational processes that you may be needed to consider? And then if there's any, or if you were identified at the time that was future learning as a result of the incident, or it might be now that you're thinking, actually, I'd like to learn more about that. How can you do that? And then finally, what were the outcomes of the incident for you as a mentor, for the other participants? What change basically occurred following that incident, whether positive or negative, and what your feelings and thoughts about that now.
Another framework that you could use to reflect on a mentoring incident is the Brookfield lens, which I have adapted to suit a mentoring context. And this is where we think about the incident from different perspectives. So first of all, you would look at it through an autobiographical lens, so thinking about it, the situation from your own perspective, considering maybe previous mentoring experiences that may have influenced this, and your reactions and feelings to the event, and how it may have resulted in unwanted physical and emotional reactions and responses as a result of that incident. And then you might want to put yourself in the position of the mentee and view your mentoring from their lens, and see if you can gain a new insight into what happened, thinking about it from their perspective. And then you might want to you can put anybody else in who's relevant within that context. So if you're mentoring a teacher, you might want to consider it from a child's view. If you mentor maybe other school leaders, thinking about it from their context. But it's all just about putting yourself in another person's shoes and viewing the situation through their eyes, and thinking about how they may have experienced it in a different way, the same situation. And then really importantly is a theoretical lens. So in order to make sense of the experience, you need to look at literature, because theories help you gain new insights and a better understanding, and an ability to explain it as well, which is often very important. And that will then help you get this full view on the situation, and then consider new steps that you might need to take to develop your mentoring practice further.
So similar to Brookfield lens are perceptual positions, which is actually a coaching tool that you may or may have not have heard of, called NLP, which stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So basically how we try and reframe our thinking and our language to move through a situation. And by taking on these three positions, we're developing our mental agility to experience the situation from different perspectives, so that we can gain new insights. And it's important that we use all the three positions in a balanced way, so that we can develop our relationships with others and our mentoring practice. So we have the first position, which is we're in our own shoes. We're connecting with what's personally important to us, which we need to do and acknowledge. How did we see, hear and feel that situation from our own perspective? And then the second position, that's when we put ourselves in the other person's shoes, trying to see it through their eyes, as if we were them. And then finally, the third position is that fly on the wall, where we're detached observer, and we try and remove all emotions from the situation, and we're just looking at it purely through a theoretical position of analysis. And you can see there underneath it tells you that if we stick to one position, there are they can have a negative impact on us in certain ways. So if we only stick to first position, then that can obviously lead to a lack of understanding, because we're only seeing it through our own eyes, and we can dismiss other people's feelings and ideas. So even though it might make us feel uncomfortable thinking about a situation, how another person felt, if it was quite an emotive situation, it is important to work through that process. However, equally, we might sometimes just naturally always think about the needs of others and put ourselves in their shoes, and that can then affect us and our self-esteem and our values, and actually we forget about ourselves in that situation and our sense of identity, at the expense of giving too much emphasis to the other person's experience. And then finally, the third position, which is useful if you're an emotional person, but excessive use can lead to then obviously appearing detached and unemotional, and it doesn't help you see it from a full perspective. So this next task now is just to build on further from the previous independent task. I'd like you to spend about 15 minutes just unpicking one incident. So a time when you've been mentoring, that something has felt like a significant moment, but it can be in any mentoring role that you've had. And then I'd like you to use the Green, Lister and Crisp or the Brookfield Lens model to support that analysis, just so that you're unpicking it at quite a lot of detail. Where it says about theory and literature, if you've got time, then it'd be really good to maybe see if you can find an online article which supports some of the themes that have come out from your incident, that you can bring and share. It could be, for example, on handling challenging conversations or developing an effective rapport. So remember that the incident doesn't need to be anything dramatic. It's just something that makes us think and reflect about ourselves or others or the organisation and processes. And here are some examples that might help just get you thinking. So it might be an occasion when you felt something went well and you observed somebody mentoring well, when you feel you made the wrong decision or a right decision, or you weren't certain. It could be when something went better than expected. It could be when you felt confident or lacked confidence. It could be when you made a mistake. It could be when you learned something from working with another mentor, or when you experienced a feeling of tension or uncertainty or apprehension or enjoyment or empowerment in your mentoring role. It could be when you realised, I don't really know enough and I need to find out some more about certain situations. It could be when you felt supported or unsupported. It may be when you felt worried about the associate teacher or the mentor, and unpicking that situation. Or it could be when you took a risk and it didn't pay off, or it did pay off and it was a positive experience. It's something that made you think, changed your mind, confirmed your opinion. Or it may be when you felt, yes, I've had a breakthrough with a particular mentor or an associate teacher. Okay. So just finally, here are this is our approach to our mentoring coaching. If you want to make links to, that would be good. And the national standards are there for you too. So I recognise that this exercise is asking you to be quite vulnerable Sort of see it as like a journaling exercise where you're kind of working through that incident to help kind of come out the other side with it. It might feel a bit uncomfortable, but you are in control of the incident that you choose, and so you don't need to share anything too traumatic unless you want to. When we come back for this part, you'll be put into pairs, so you won't be sharing in front of a large group. It will just be a one-on-one opportunity for you to really work through that incident with somebody. So thank you for listening, and I will see you back in the group later.